Staying in a safe, stable job is supposed to be the responsible choice, but I stayed 2 years too long and it ended up being the most expensive decision I've ever made. And the reason I stayed wasn't because I was being a pussy. Well, yeah, it probably was that a little bit, but what I'm trying to say is it wasn't just fear. It was something I really didn't want to admit. I knew I needed to leave at least 2 years before I actually did. I just couldn't make myself care anymore, okay? Not about the KPIs, not about the fake deadlines that are master's urgent. I couldn't stand the code switching, never bringing my true self to work ever. Even the slightest task was making my eyes roll so far back inside my head that I could literally see the inside of my skull. It was clear my body knew something before my brain was ready to admit it. It was literally staging a revolt, for Christ's sake. I remember a phase when I was really into self-help and habit tracking, trying to improve my habits because what I thought I needed was more discipline. I bought the apps, I read the books, I tried the morning routines, but the longer I stayed in that job, the more self-help I needed just to function. I just couldn't seem to muster up the motivation. Okay, I would procrastinate all the time, but it was literally my body and my brain having an allergic reaction to the circumstances I had put it in. Because you can't discipline your way out of being in the wrong place. So for me, what was the crucial time that this all came crashing down and I had to deal with it was when COVID hit. And just like everybody else, I had real time to think, time to focus on what was actually important, to ruminate on how short life could be. I actually lost my nan during that time. And I mean, she was really old and she had a long and good life, but the accumulation of all these things just reinforced what we already know deep down, that tomorrow isn't promised. You can be here one day and be gone the next. And I still had so many things I wanted to achieve, so many dreams I'd put on hold because I was building my career, a bucket list of things that kept getting longer while my days kept getting consumed by work that I didn't even care about. I wanted to know that if it all ended today, I'd at least try to achieve a couple of things on that list, that I hadn't just existed and paid bills and showed up and collected a salary while my whole life passed me by. I knew I needed to leave, but knowing and actually doing the damn thing and leaving are two completely different things, because leave to do what? I didn't want to struggle. I definitely didn't want to be broke. I didn't want to sacrifice everything I'd built. I was too old for the figure it out as you go approach, too tired for the constant hustle, too aware of what financial instability actually feels like to romanticize it. And one of my favorite quotes is, the smartest people always have the smartest excuses. And girl, did I have excuses, okay? Because here's the truth. I didn't want to give up my lifestyle. I didn't want to go backwards financially. I didn't want to move into a smaller flat. I didn't want to stop being able to afford the things that I'd literally worked hard for years to be able to do. So I needed to figure out how to get paid a premium rate with the skills I already had and not start over at the bottom of someone else's pyramid. Truthfully, I wasn't afraid of leaving. I was afraid of sacrificing everything that I'd built up to this point. And before you judge me, okay, for being materialistic, hear me out, because I am not inherently against lifestyle creep. I think the whole point of earning more money is to enjoy a certain lifestyle. Because if you can't enjoy life because work consumes most of it, then what is the fucking point? But if leaving meant cutting my income in half and moving backwards, then that equation wasn't going to work for me either. So I was kind of trapped between two bad options: stay miserable but comfortable, or leave and struggle while I rebuilt from zero. And neither of those options felt like freedom. And the reality was, I'd built a life around that salary, the ability to help my family when they needed it, the ability to travel without stressing about every single dollar, the ability to live in a place I actually liked instead of the cheapest option available. These are the things that I'd worked for, and the thought of giving them up felt like punishing myself for wanting something better. I literally made spreadsheets, color-coded and everything, and I calculated the gap between what I earned and what I could realistically make starting over in a new industry or launching some undefined business. And that gap was terrifying. It brought tears to my eyes, because I remember talking to a recruiter trying to figure out how I could get into a different industry. And I thought that maybe if I could find something that paid similarly to my current job but didn't make me want to literally die inside, then maybe I could cope with that. And he told me straight, he said, just stay where you are, because it's going to be really hard pivoting and commanding the same salary. He even said to me, it might take you years. And even then you'll be competing with people who have more experience than you, and you'll be starting from the bottom again. And he also said something that stuck with me that I'll never forget. He said, I hate recruitment, but the money is just too good to leave. And that right there is the trap. That is what keeps intelligent, capable people stuck in work they resent, because they can't see how to replicate that income anywhere else. Because starting over feels impossible when you have bills to pay, a life to maintain. And I guess that's why they call it the golden handcuffs. I stayed because of identity, because of lifestyle inflation, because of status, even though this was all slowly suffocating me. And I'll be honest, because part of why this was such a big deal for me was because I tried to leave before. I tried multiple times even. I tried many side hustles and they all fizzled out. And it was almost like that failure reinforced this belief that I was just stuck because I tried this already. It didn't work. Like, how much more motivation do I need to keep the cycle of trying things and then failing at things? I literally didn't have the appetite or the patience to invest years into another path that might not work out, because I'd already invested so many years into this one. But what I didn't see at the time is those side hustles failed because of a very specific reason. I was chasing trendy business models, like whatever looked successful online. I was trying to build something completely separate from my career, something new, something completely different from my day job. Every side hustle I attempted had nothing to do with what I was actually good at. And so I was starting from zero every single time, learning new platforms, new audiences, new skill sets, competing with people who'd been doing this for literally years. So of course it didn't work. I dismissed my actual professional expertise as being too boring or not special enough. I thought my career skills didn't really count as a business because they were maybe too niche or too corporate or too tied to a specific company. And the irony of all of this was I was being paid really well for those exact skills. My employer valued them enough to keep me around and promote me, but I thought they had no value outside of that building. I hadn't even considered auditing the skills I already had because I assumed that the only value that they had was inside a 9-to-5, even though we hear things like skills are transferable, but what does that actually mean? How does that translate into money outside of your 9-to-5? I don't know. So I wasted time learning new skills instead of monetizing the ones that I already had. I was literally ignoring my career capital completely, using it to make someone else wealthy while building side projects that had nothing to do with my actual competitive advantage. I thought building a business meant starting something completely separate from my career, something fresh, something that looked like what I saw people doing on TikTok and YouTube. And I was wrong. And the breakthrough came when I realized something really simple but massive. It massively changed my perspective. My career capital was the business. I just couldn't see it yet. I didn't need to start from scratch. I didn't need to reinvent myself. I needed to redeploy what I had already built. Because career capital isn't something you leave behind when you want freedom. It's something that you leverage to get there. But the problem was I couldn't see what I had. Because when you're inside a job, you describe your value in a way that only makes sense in that one context, in titles, in process-specific language, very specific to your company. All of it obscures what you're actually good at and what it's worth or could be worth externally. I needed to see my skills outside of my employer's framework, not through a job description or a performance review, through the lens of what would someone pay premium rates for? So I built a way to map those skills, not what I wish I had, what I'd actually been using at a senior level for years. Turns out the skills that I'd been dismissing as just part of my job, like the boring skills, they actually had premium markets. I just didn't know where to look. I'd been supporting founders as a chief of staff and an executive assistant for years. I could think strategically, see problems before they happened, be their right hand. And turns out a lot of founders would pay a lot of money for someone who can handle their operational chaos. Every time I created a system, every time I documented a workflow or made teams more efficient, that's systems consulting. Startups scaling from 10 to 50 people are literally desperate trying to figure out how to create structure without killing momentum. They'll pay consultants thousands to build exactly what I was doing every day as just part of my job. Even the experience from my failed side hustles were worth something. Although I'd spent years trying and failing at various different businesses, I picked up things. I'd learned marketing, I'd learned creative strategy, paid ads, and those were also skills that founders would pay a lot of money for. These weren't just soft skills, they were commercially valuable capabilities that solved really expensive problems. But when someone asked me what I did, I would just say, I deal with operations, and leave it at that. I couldn't articulate the commercial value because I'd never had to. My employer understood it, and that was enough, until it wasn't, of course. I'd never thought of myself as someone who could charge premium rates for the kind of expertise that I had because it felt too normal. The skills I had felt too much like just doing my job. But when I mapped my actual career capital, when I translated what I did into commercial value, then the options became visible. Suddenly I was able to do fractional chief of operations work for small companies that couldn't afford or didn't need a full-time hire but desperately needed operational leadership. I was able to do executive support for founders who were drowning in logistics. I was able to do systems consultings for startups that needed someone to come in and assess their chaos and build structure fast. These were all real opportunities with real budgets attached that made real money. I just couldn't see it because I was looking at my skills through my employer's lens. I had career capital, I had an unfair advantage, I had access to high-level skills, executive context, strategic thinking. I just couldn't see it clearly enough to monetize it. And this is what I wish someone had told me years earlier. Now, the point I'm trying to make to you is you probably have more career capital than you realize, and it's probably worth more than you think. The problem isn't your capability, it's visibility. And that clarity was life-changing for me. It wasn't like some giant switch that flipped. It wasn't that I quit my job immediately. It was more gradual than that because it allowed me to start testing things whilst I was still employed. And here's what's great about earning your first $1,000 or $2,000 while you're still employed. It opens your mind to the possibilities. Not only are you earning more money, but it gives you evidence that this shit actually works. My first retainer client paid me about $3,000 per month. And let me be clear about what that meant, because that was almost half of my monthly take-home pay from my full-time job for work that took me maybe 15, 20 hours per month because I was leveraging skills I'd already spent years developing. I wasn't learning from scratch. I already had the connections. I already had the workflows. I already knew how to do the work at a high level. It just went by easier than slogging to learn something completely new in an entirely different industry. I leveraged my career capital in ways that commanded premium rates, and I didn't sacrifice my lifestyle to do it. I just built around it. I was basically redeploying my skills strategically because honestly, the work itself wasn't harder than what I was already doing. In some ways, it was easier because I was working directly with the founders who valued what I brought to the table. No corporate politics, no pointless meetings, no code switching, just solving specific problems for people who are willing to pay well for the solutions I provided. And when more clients and opportunities started coming in, when I realized the pipeline was real and not just a fluke, that's when the psychological shift happened because I didn't actually need the job anymore. I was still showing up, still doing the work, but I was no longer working from a place of being a pussy, okay? I wasn't trapped. I was choosing to be there while I built the rest. My career capital had translated into commercial value, and it was the fastest route to more income because I wasn't competing in an oversaturated market or learning brand new skills. I was working with specific expertise within my industry and adjacent industries where my background gave me credibility and context that others just couldn't compete with. I wasn't building a business from scratch. I was monetizing the career capital I spent years building over my career. And that's a completely different situation to be in. And slowly, things like the Sunday night scaries disappeared, not because I'd quit, but because I knew I could. The mornings I couldn't get out of bed, those stopped too, because work was no longer this oppressive thing that I was chained to. It was a choice, and knowing it was a choice changed everything about how I felt about it. And yes, eventually I did leave, not because I hit rock bottom or because I got fired or the company collapsed, but because I'd built something that gave me the option to walk away on my terms. And that's real freedom. So if you're watching this and you recognize yourself in any part of this story, if you know you should leave but don't want to start from scratch, and if you've tried side hustles before and haven't got anywhere, and if you can't see how your skills translate into premium income opportunities outside your employer, I have built a tool for you, because it's what I wish I had all those years earlier, because it would have made the process so much quicker if I had just had someone tell me, this is what your skills are able to get you outside of your 9 to 5. So first, the skills to income tool maps your career capital. So what you've actually built through your years of professional experience, the skills you use every day that you just dismiss as part of your job. And then secondly, it translates those into income opportunities. It shows you what buyers will pay premium rates for which of the skills that you have. It also shows you how to position what you already know in a language that makes commercial sense to the buyer, not just your employer. And it shows you the options that you have access to that you can't currently see. This is literally the thing that got me unstuck. Not by giving me some motivational fluff, but giving me real visibility into what I actually had and what it was worth. That clarity is what unlocked everything else. You'll find the link to the Skills to Income Blueprint below this video, so go check it out. Because I stayed 2 years too long because I thought I needed to start a new business doing something trendy, something that looked like what other successful people were doing. But the truth is, my business was already built. I just needed to see it clearly and understand what it was worth. And that's probably true for you too. You don't need to start from scratch. You don't need to sacrifice your lifestyle or move backwards financially or spend years learning completely new skills in a field you know nothing about. You don't even need to become a different person or chase some passion that you're not even sure you have. But what you do need to do is you need to see what you already have and what it can command in the open market. But you can't monetize what you can't see. That's the only thing standing between you and options. It's visibility, not motivation, not more discipline, just the ability to see your own career capital in a way the market would see it. Because once you have that clarity, everything else becomes possible. Not easy, but possible. Because the question isn't whether you have valuable skills, you do. The question is, can you see them clearly enough to use them to their full potential? Because once you can, the options appear and you get to choose what happens next on your terms. That's what changed it for me, and it can change it for you too, but only if you can see what you already have.